Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here. In today's video, we have to talk about interest rates because yes, they did in fact increase alongside the rate increase by the Federal Reserve. But before we get into this video, as always, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And then if you want to see more content just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post videos every single day. And then last thing I do want to mention is if the audio is a little bit weird in this video, it's because I'm not using a microphone on my camera because my camera and my microphone are kind of having a feud. So I'm going to be buying a completely new camera and microphone next week, but until then, sorry about the audio if it's weird at all. Anyways, let's dive right into it. Now, before I discuss these new rates, I do need to quickly talk about what actually affects the interest rate you get. Everyone already knows that, well, your credit score affects the rate by a massive amount. So if you have good credit, then you're going to get a better rate than someone that has bad credit. Pretty self-explanatory. How much money you put down also affects the rate because lending institutions like to see some commitment from someone. So even if you're taking out a loan that is not necessarily the best when it comes to loan to value, you don't have the best credit, but you have money down, that still actually helps out with getting you a slightly lower rate. And speaking of loan to value, if you take out a loan that is over 100% of a vehicle's value, your rate's not going to be nearly as good as if you took out a loan that was under 100% of that vehicle's value. And there is also regional changes. Some regions have better rates than other regions. I don't know why that ends up happening because the federal funds rate is what the federal funds rate is, but that's just what lending institutions decide to do. And so again, there are a lot of factors that affect rates, but now let's dive into those rates. First off, when it comes to new cars, and I do want to mention that this is an average, this is not necessarily going to be the rate that you would get because, well, some lending institutions will offer rates lower than this and some will offer rates that are higher than this. And again, dependent on all the situations that I just discussed in the first part of the video. But 60 months, good credit, brand new car, you're looking at like 6% now. 72 months, 6.5%, 7% with most lending institutions. 84 months, you're like 8% on a brand new car. And then if you move over to used cars, it's pretty crazy. So with 60 months, it's in the 7 to 8% range, again, depending on the lending institution. Some are offering a little bit lower though. I've noticed if it's like a newer model year vehicle, which again is pretty typical. If you take out a loan on an older vehicle, well, your rate's not going to be as good as if it's a newer model year vehicle. And then 72 months, it's in that like 8 to 9% range. And then 84 months on a used car, you're now over 10%. And again, this is for people that have good credit. If you have bad credit, it's consistently in the double digits for most terms. And if you have really bad credit, you're looking at well over 20%. And it's getting to the point where like we're getting to that like 30% mark, which is absolutely insane. Like if you're in a situation where you have to have a rate of almost 30%, you probably shouldn't take out a loan on that car because you're going to pay way more in interest on the car than what that car is actually worth. Like you're probably going to pay for the car like twice over by the time your term is over. Even though those high interest rate loans are typically reserved over a short period of time, still interest is interest at the end of the day. So rates have definitely increased a massive amount. Now, any sort of rate change is going to have effects on the car market, and let's dive right into that. So first off, with people that don't have the best credit, they're pretty much just being completely pushed out of the market based on affordability. Unless you have like perfect credit at this point, you're pretty much guaranteed to get a rate in the double digit range, which means your payment is going to be astronomical because of how much interest you're paying. And then on top of that, the amount of money that you pay by the end of the loan term, if you make all your payments, is going to be so much that it's probably just not going to make sense for you once you actually do the math. But again, a lot of the times people that don't have the best credit don't end up doing that math. So if you don't have good credit, please do the math so you can see how much you're actually paying for a car. And ask yourself if you would pay that amount for that car in cash. And if the answer is no, then you probably shouldn't be buying the car. But this is going to naturally put more downward pressure on the car market. However, the downward pressure isn't going to be equal. People that typically don't have the best credit don't look at new cars because they automatically assume that they can't afford a new car. And I experienced this when I worked at the car dealership. People that didn't have good credit would always come in on used cars because they thought that's all they could afford. And sometimes they'd actually leave in a new car because that ended up being more affordable because of how rates work with new cars versus used cars. But naturally, with these people being completely put out of the market and mostly out of the used car market, there's going to be more downward pressure on the used car market. And again, we've already seen certain segments decline by 3% in just 1 week. And so with this recent rate increase, I can imagine that decline is only going to increase within the used car market. Now, when it comes to the new car market, like I said, people that don't have the best credit typically don't go after new cars, and so I don't think we're going to have nearly as much downward pressure with the new car market. And there's already a lot happening within the new car market with supply issues that are increasing, which is crazy because we've been dealing with that for like 2 years at this point. But all you need to know for this segment in the video is that used car prices, when it comes to the wholesale values, are going to decline much more rapidly over the sales month of November. And this might finally put some downward pressure on those retail values if the wholesale values decline enough that dealers are just going to have to start taking L's to get rid of their inventory before things get even worse. Now, when it comes to individuals with, better credit or, really good credit, perfect credit, right? This whole rate increase is still going to affect them, but not nearly as much because, paying 6, 7, 8% on an auto loan rate is pretty crazy. But there have been times in the past where that's just what the norm was. And so what we're most likely going to see with these individuals that have better credit is that, they're probably going to pull back initially, but as soon as these rate increases stop and the rate just stabilizes, then you're probably going to see people just buying like normal because they're just going to go, yep, this is just what the market is. 8% is normal. And you see the same thing with the housing market. And we've actually seen that happen over the course of this year because as these rate increases have happened, the housing market will kind of like slow down. But then if there's no rate increases for a certain amount of time, then the housing market starts to kind of pick up a little bit, and then you have another rate increase and then it slows down. And so the same thing kind of applies to the automotive market. And so what you're going to see is this kind of like stop-start type thing with the market. But another thing to mention is, since rates are on everyone's minds, then this is something that automakers are definitely going to focus on. And what they're going to do is simply just buy down rates. So they're going to potentially offer, 0% if you finance through their financing institution, or, maybe it won't be 0%, but it'll be significantly lower than what you're able to get in the open market. And this is something that automakers pretty much always do, but especially when rates are high. And so what I'd expect to see within the new car market is not necessarily a lot of discounts off of MSRP. Yes, some brands will do that, but what you'll see more likely is that the vehicles will still be selling for MSRP, but then maybe, with 0% for 72 months or 36 months or something. And what I'd have to say is, even if the payment is really high at like a 36-month loan for 0%, that's a heck of a lot better than taking out, a 72-month or an 84-month loan and paying 7, 8, 9% in interest. Again, just do the math over the term of the loan, and then you'll see, even though, again, those payments can be pretty big with those short terms, could definitely be worth it. Kind of already sprinkled advice throughout the video, but I always have to have a segment in every single video where we talk about how you can use this information to help you out as a buyer. So here's the deal. If you don't have the best credit, I would recommend, sit on the sidelines for right now and focus on building your credit, because these interest rates are most likely not going to go away anytime soon. And so the best thing that you can do for yourself is to put yourself in a position where your credit's good enough to get the lowest possible interest rate, because paying double digits when it comes to interest rates, it's just, not worth it whatsoever. The amount of it, just do the math. Seriously, just type into Google car loan calculator, however much the car is that you're planning on buying, and the interest rate that you qualify for, and you're going to see how much that car will cost you in total, and you're probably going to get really sick to your stomach and go, okay, maybe I should wait a little bit. Now, for those of you that are extremely well qualified, have really good credit, I would just wait for those, low APR deals to come from new car automakers, or potentially 0% APR. And like I said, with most of those 0% programs, a lot of the times they'll do it over a very short term, which means the payment will be really high. And you know, again, I know it's a situation that it's kind of sucky, but if you're going to buy a car anyways, then I would just bite the bullet and do the higher payment and not pay any money in interest, rather than, you know, paying tens of thousands of dollars in interest. Because here's the deal. If you can afford to pay all that money in interest, then you can afford to pay the higher monthly payment over the shorter term. So that would be my recommendation for new car buyers, is to wait for those deals to come out with the low APR from the automakers. And if it's a short term, me personally, I'd bite the bullet. That's going to sum things up for today's video. Like I said, if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe, because I post this content every single day. I'll see you.